Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Outlook with me, your host Mohammed Shafiq, live here on Takbeer TV. We're on SKY Channel 743, broadcasting here in the United Kingdom, on social media and around the world, on satellite. Wherever you are around the world, a very warm welcome. Tonight we're talking about Muslims in the media, with a rising tide of Islamophobia, and not just on the mainstream media. We are often talked about, talked at, but very rarely do we get this racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia and people in the media. I've got over experience of speaking on the mainstream media. In recent years, I've kind of taken a step back because of that toxic environment. My next guest is an accomplished journalist, international journalist, Roshan Saleh, has worked in various networks, including Al Jazeera and Press TV, amongst many others, appeared on the mainstream media, but also is the co-editor of the Five Pillars. We say a website, but it's like a media platform that is broadcasting and making a huge difference and input, and giving the Muslims a positive platform where they can air their views. Now, in the current climate, where we see what is happening in Gaza today, where the Rafah crossing has been opened for the first time in nearly 2 years, aid is still not getting it in, and we are seeing a by-election in Denton and Dorton. Sorry, put my teeth back in Gorton and Denton, which is happening at the moment. We'll talk about that. But first of all, let's give a very warm welcome to Brother Roshan Saleh. Roshan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam, Brother Mohammed. How are you?
I'm very good. It makes a change because normally when I used to come on to your TV programs, you used to interview me. So it's nice to turn the page and do differently. First of all, tell us a bit about your career and how did you end up setting up Five Pillars?
Okay, well, I mean, I've been a journalist for about 27 years now. So I started out very small, local newspapers in the UK and, covering summer fetes and school fairs and all that kind of stuff. And then I went into kind of the mainstream media for about 6 years. I worked at London Weekend Television, it was at the time, which is a subsidiary of Granada. So we worked for kind of the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, Sky, and doing different kind of factual news programs and documentaries. And I just had this feeling that even though I was kind of working on some quite high profile programs in the British context with millions of people watching, I wasn't satisfied because I wanted to work for my community. I was a believing, practicing Muslim, still am, alhamdulillah, and I just felt that working in the mainstream wasn't for me. I couldn't really get my ideas across. I wasn't really serving my community, and I felt that the mainstream kind of their idea of diversity was kind of tokenism. They would get kind of black and brown faces and even Muslim faces on there, but they wouldn't really be representing their community or adding any value. So I decided to get out, made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to work in the mainstream anymore. I went to work with Al Jazeera for several years. I came back to the UK, and I worked with the Islam channel for a few years, then with Press TV for many years. But even though I was working for all those organizations and doing a lot of traveling and kind of getting a lot of experience and doing a lot of high profile stories, I still wasn't satisfied in myself. I felt that I was working for somebody else's agenda, whether it was a state agenda or a sectarian agenda, etc. So I just thought I would set up the Five Pillars, which was just a website and a Facebook page in 2013, myself and Dili Hussain, and I just wanted to be in the driving seat that Muslims weren't being represented, their voices weren't being heard, they were being heavily filtered by the mainstream media, by non-Muslims in many ways, if I want to put it directly. And I just felt that we needed an authentic voice which was unfiltered, and that's what Five Pillars was about. It started out as a labor of love, and in 13 years it's grown into something a lot bigger than just a website, but a kind of a multimedia platform. And alhamdulillah, we have a certain influence and we reach a certain amount of people, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, you do. I was talking earlier about my experience of being in the media over 20 years on those mainstream platforms, but I often got a perception that whatever we did was linked to security, terrorism, extremism, child sexual exploitation. They were the topics on which they wanted to talk to us, and that was framed in that way. We were often talked about and talked at. How do you think Muslims are portrayed in the mainstream media?
Yeah, it's very much like that. I mean, I get quite a lot of invitations. I get fewer invitations than I used to, You know, we used to be on the BBC and Sky and other channels quite often, but I noticed that we don't get that many invitations anymore. And I don't think it's because we did badly. I think it's because we did too well. And maybe a memo went around from, you know, people like Sarah Khan, the ex-extremism czar. I think she sent a memo around saying don't interview certain people, and you know that was followed. But we still get invited on, but it's always when the topic is against us. It's always with some kind of controversial element, as you say, you know, Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs. That, you know, that it's always framed that way, or it's about terrorism or security questions or something controversial to do with Islam. I never feel like it's a level playing field, so I've kind of stopped going on these channels because I know that you're onto a hiding to nothing. It's often two against one. The presenter is against you as well. They don't give you
Yeah.
time to speak,
Clickbait. Mm.
especially, yeah, they don't give you time to speak, or especially if it's online. They'll cut you off a lot and they'll ask you leading questions. So if I do that, I tend to say I'll only go into the studio when it's live, and then at least it's a bit more of a level playing field. So yeah, my experience of the mainstream media isn't good. I personally wouldn't. I mean, logically, I think Muslims need to get into the mainstream media as well as the Muslim media, because we need. Well, obviously, we're a minority living in a majority non-Muslim society, so we have to influence the wider society. But the experiences that I've had personally and of friends that have been in the mainstream are mainly negative, I must admit. So that I want to kind of create a home, you know, in the future. I know we're still a little bit small at the moment, but inshallah we'll grow. And I want to create a home for Muslims who are believing and practicing and don't want to compromise on their values. I want them to get into Muslim media, and I want to see more Muslim media, not just five pillars, but I want journalism and Muslim journalism in particular to be taken seriously as a profession. We're good at charity, we're good at halal meat, you know, shops and restaurants and business and many other things, but I don't think we take journalism seriously as a profession. I think attitudes are changing. I think we are seeing the value of, you know, the strategic value for the ummah of the information space, but still there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and you did a lot of work in the five pillars. As you said, you started off as a website, and now you do take on the issues around videos and reporting live from scenes in the community. How important is that shift to TikTok, Facebook, and other social media platforms and having video content?
Yes, so I mean, I think the journalism industry's changed quite a lot in my career, and more people now are consuming their information, including news, from video rather than from reading articles. I mean, my generation, we mainly read articles and newspapers, and we watched the news at 10. I mean, news is just not being consumed that way, especially by younger people under 35. So we had no choice but to move towards video strategy, like the journalistry. And, you know, obviously AI is changing the game as well now. Social media platforms are very important, but they do tend to censor. And I think Muslim pro-Palestine opinion is systematically censored online by the bigger, you know, social media platforms, especially Meta has been particularly bad at doing that over the years on Facebook and Instagram. So we face censorship on one side, and we find ourselves with the only option of going to platforms like X, where we do have greater freedom of speech, but it's full of racists and Islamophobes. So we're getting insulted there every single day. But we got nowhere else to go. And I'm sure you've heard of this new platform, Upscrolled, by
Yeah.
this Palestinian brother who's based in Australia. I mean, that's got like 1 million users in 1 week, simply because Muslims are tired of being censored on these social media platforms or being forced to being insulted, traduced, slandered on platforms like X.
Yeah, that's really important. And obviously, we see a link, or is there a link between the rhetoric we see, political rhetoric we see in the media and from some politicians, and the hate that we see in the streets? You know, in the last 48 hours, my social media is packed with far right and reform people posting on my just hatred and targeting because I'm a Muslim. How connected are those two?
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence, that, I mean, Muslims, according to the police statistics, are always far and away at the top of the hate crime statistics, perpetrated against us, I mean. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we've had an organized attempt to basically get the far right in power in this country. So Reform UK, I think, poses a huge threat to Muslims. I think if they do come into power, we'll see draconian laws enacted and severe pressure on restricting the freedom of speech and assembly of Muslims. On the same By the same token, we have a very influential social media platform called X, run by a white supremacist, Elon Musk, and he's pushing people like Tommy Robinson. He's pushing Reform UK, and the far right in this country in particular. So we basically have a foreign-led and finance attempt to influence the politics in this country towards the right, and Muslims are their targets.
Yeah, well, we are taking calls as well. So if you want to put a question to Roshan, the number is 01212851845. That's the number 01212851845. Let's go to the lines. Let's see who's on the first line. Line one, Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Takbeer TV. What's your question?
My question is,
Assalamu alaikum.
Iran and America, if the war breaks
Caller one.
two countries, will it?
Okay, we'll come back to that. Roshan, I mean, you talked about social media platforms amplifying Islamophobia. We often see these platforms try to reach out to the Muslim community and community leaders to try to understand that. Do you think social media platforms are doing enough to tackle Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of racism?
Well, I'm surprised you say that, Mohan, because I haven't seen any evidence of that. Maybe you know something I don't, but I don't see them reaching out to Muslims. Or they try to pick and choose the right type of Muslim, the kind of Muslim that might be not too, resistant to their agenda, but certainly not. I mean, obviously some are worse than the others. We have obviously the TV industry in this country, which is regulated by Ofcom, and Takbeer TV is as well. And Ofcom, by and large, they ensure that hate speech doesn't proliferate. So I think the TV news industry is fairly well regulated. I have my issues with Ofcom, but overall, it's better regulated than anything else. Then we have a print journalism industry, which is a bit of a law to itself because they self-regulate, and they basically don't. It's like the police investigating the police, So you'll see some egregious examples of hate and Islamophobia on, newspapers like the Daily Mail is very famous for it, but many others as well, the Express, the Star, many others. And then you have social media, which isn't really regulated at all, although I think the government is seeking to regulate it to some extent through the Online Safety Act. But generally, it's a bit of a Wild West. And, obviously these media moguls like Zuckerberg and Musk and others, these are the richest men in the world, the most powerful men in the world. And even, governments are hesitant to take them on, quite frankly. So, yeah, I would say the social media platforms, Meta, I think did regulate, but they over-regulated and they targeted pro-Palestinian and Muslim opinion. X is a complete law to itself, and they're obviously amplifying far-right algorithms. They're pushing people like Tommy Robinson, and generally, these people, they're giving the impression. Also, there's lots of bots on there, anonymous bots, which you don't find on other social media channels, and they are the most racist. They will literally call you names that I can't say on this channel, but names that you and me were called back in the 1980s, and the absolute vitriol and lies perpetrated about Muslims on X in particular is something to behold. But at the same time, X is one of the few platforms where there is a Muslim presence as well, and you and I can express our opinions. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
What responsibility do you think journalists, editors, and proprietors, and overall the broadcasters have in shaping a more accurate image of Muslim communities here in the UK and around the world?
Billion plus Muslims in perhaps about 4 million. So we're a significant minority, and in places like London, we're 1 in 9 of the population. Yet generally the journalism industry is full of white people, white non-Muslims who have very little understanding of our religion. In fact, I think if you dug a little bit deeper into some of the most prominent non-Muslim journalists in this country, you'd find that their ignorance about Islam is absolutely outstanding. I don't think it goes much beyond the 5 pillars of Islam. And even if they knew the 5 pillars, I think I'd be surprised. They literally have very little knowledge about our religion and us as a people and what we believe. And that shines through in their journalism. And I think they're easily manipulated by bad faith actors as well, pretending to be the voice of the Muslim community. And they'll they'll prioritize certain opinion and minimize other opinions. So basically, Muslims don't really have a presence on the mainstream media, or very little. Occasionally you'll go on, or Ajmal Masroor will go on, and they'll do a good job. But by and large, we don't really have a presence in mainstream media. Our stories are not being told, and that's why there is such a demand for platforms like 5 Pillars. But at the moment, to answer your question, the head of these social media organizations and broadcasters and newspapers, they're doing very little. I mean, they should be being trained. They should be getting Muslim training in. I mean, the Jewish community makes sure that their organizations get into these broadcasters and newspapers, and they lobby them. We should be doing the same as a Muslim community. We should be training them. This is acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is what Islam is. This is what it isn't, etc., etc.
So welcome. You are watching Outlook with me, Mohammed Shafiq, live and exclusive here on Takbeer TV. We're on Sky Channel 743. We're on social media and we're across the world on satellite. We are taking your calls as well. As I said, let's go to line 1. Assalamu alaikum, you're live on Takbeer TV.
Wa alaikum salam. I'm speaking from Birmingham. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me, sir?
Wa alaikum salam. Yeah, I can hear you now. What's your comment or question for Roshan?
My question is this about Islamophobia. There is a growing tension between America and Iran, and if the war breaks out between these two countries, will it create instability particularly for Muslims in this region?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Roshan. There is a ever drumbeat of another foreign adventure by the United States government. Iran is in talks, we understand. But if that was to break out, what impact would that have on Islamophobia here in the UK and around the world?
Well, Mohammed, I mean, have you ever known a US intervention in the Middle East to work? They've all been disasters, haven't they? From Iraq twice, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya. What happens is that they go in gung-ho bombing. Sometimes they invade, sometimes they occupy, but whatever they do, they cause chaos, and hundreds of thousands of people die and millions are made refugees. That is the lesson from every single US intervention in the Middle East in our lifetimes. So why this one would be any different, it seems crazy to me. But I want to link this to the media, because the mainstream media has done an incredibly bad job when it comes to reporting this issue. They have taken the word of Iranian dissidents as gospel. They have not bothered to seek the Iranian government's point of view, or when they present it as evil dictators. Now, I'm not, I used to work for an Iranian channel, but I'm actually not in that world anymore. But, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Iranian state by any means. But at the same time, you have to be fair. Iran may not be a perfect country. It's not run perfectly. There's no doubt about that, but it's been under sanctions for 40 years. It has been under military threat for all that time as well. And now there's a huge American armada in the Gulf. It's basically in a very, very difficult position. And I don't think anyone would be able to run their country very well under that kind of pressure. This is all about Israel, in my opinion. This is about Israel wanting to take away threats. Obviously, in the last year, they've weakened Hamas, they've weakened Hezbollah, they've done a regime change, or they've helped bring about a regime change in Syria as well. And they see their biggest threat as Iran. Obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu has the ear of Donald Trump and is encouraging him to take out the Iranian authorities. And Israel doesn't care about the spill out. who will suffer? It'll be the neighboring countries, not just the Iranians themselves, because you know, the regime is well embedded. It is very popular as well amongst large sections of Iranian society. I've been to Iran twice, I can testify to that. But you do have a large minority that doesn't like it at the same time, and I think Israel and America are exploiting that. But what will happen is that the government will not fall quickly. This is going to be a 10-year Syria-type civil war, and it will spill over into other countries. Pakistan neighbors Iran, so does, you know, I think Iran has about 8 different countries that could effectively be that neighbor it. So that is why no one in the region, even countries that don't particularly like Iran, like Saudi Arabia, they don't want this war because they can see the consequences. And I think, yeah, to answer your caller's question, it will lead to Islamophobia in this country because, yet again, it'll be the West bombing a Muslim country, and that will lead to Muslims protesting. Even a lot of, you know, Muslims in this country are not particularly fans of Iran, but they can still see an injustice when they see one, and they can still see another war being launched on behalf of Israel. And that will lead to, you know, the Israeli supporters in this country targeting the Palestine supporters or the Iran supporters. And it's just going to be a mess. And this is never simple. It's never clean. There's always a spillover.
Yeah, well, let's take another call as well. 0121 285 1845 is our number. Roshan Saleh, the co-editor of 5 Pillars, is joining us. Let's go to line 2. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Takbeer TV. What's your question or comment for Roshan? Assalamu alaikum, caller. Okay. Well, we are taking calls, as I said. Roshan, can I just... Okay, are you there? Caller on air. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, brother, sister. Okay, well, if you are trying to come on, please put your TV volume down and be ready to take the caller. When I say go into the callers, just say assalamu alaikum and give you a comment, because we've got just over 30 minutes to go and we're halfway through the program. Roshan, but there is also a group of people within Iran, majority of the society, who want better economic situations. They're holding their own government responsible for the huge economic mess that exists. I hear what you say about the sanctions, and then when they tried to protest against that, they were violently put down and killed and injured, and human rights abuses on an industrial scale. Do you accept that side as well, whilst accepting the narrative you put up here?
My assessment is that the hardcore supporters of the Iranian authorities would be about 30% of the population, mainly poor people outside of the cities, more religious people, more conservative people. I would say that another 30% or 40% maybe are cautious supporters, in the sense that they believe in some kind of Islamic system, but they want reform of it. And they do blame the government for mismanagement, corruption, etc. But they don't want foreign invasion. You know, they don't see that as the answer to their issues. They just want some reform of the system. And then you have about 25% of the population that probably wants the Islamic regime to be overthrown. And I think these are the ones that we're hearing more from. You know, maybe some of the English speakers in some of the cities and in the diaspora. I think they're giving a false impression to the world's media and to the public of the world of what's really going on in Iran. And I think that they're doing this because they want Donald Trump to bomb the country, to enact regime change, and they want to ride into Tehran on the back of American tanks, and they want Tehran culturally to turn into London or Paris. I don't completely accept the narrative. No, I think there were protests to begin with. I think those protests were hijacked, and I think that the Iranian authorities, they're quite harsh, but I think this time they probably acted with caution simply because Donald Trump had threatened to bomb them if they kill loads of protesters. So I've no doubt that they killed many instigators. I've no doubt that they probably killed innocent people as well, as always does happen in the crossfire. Many Iranian police people, security forces were killed as well. But no, in general, I don't buy none of us know for sure because the internet was shut down because they didn't want people communicating with each other to organize riots. So my best guess is that innocent people were killed, but not on a mass scale. We're not talking about 40,000. Those, I think, there are numbers that are made up. The Iranian authorities have said 2,000, 3,000. That sounds right to me. I think they're pragmatic lot. They're not stupid. They know that if they kill loads of people, then it's bombs away time from America. They're not stupid. So for that reason alone, I do not believe the Iranian dissident narrative. I think it's lies, and I think it's there to basically get Donald Trump to bomb the country.
Okay, 0121-285-1845 is our number. Let's go to lines again. Assalamu alaikum. Who's on line one?
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Azhar Khan.
Welcome, sir. What would you like to say?
I say America tell them Iran to show me nuclear. Why they not asking Russia show me nuclear? Thank you.
Yeah. Russia, this is an often question which is put. You've got Pakistan who've got nuclear weapons. India have, Russia have, France, UK and USA. Israel never admits that they have nuclear weapons, but most of us know that they do. Why is there a Iran-Pacific question around nuclear weapons and not to the other 5 or 6 countries that do possess nuclear weapons?
I mean, well, it's obvious because those countries that possess nuclear weapons, by and large, are allies. I mean, no, that's not completely true because obviously Russia and China have nuclear weapons and they're not allies of America, but they're kind of too big to bully, you know, you know, they've already reached the threshold of being nuclear powers. And I think the countries now that have nuclear weapons, they don't want to see proliferation. They want to have all the nuclear weapons to ensure strategic dominance over everyone else who's not allowed nuclear weapons. And I guess Iran's main sin in the eyes of the West is that they've basically coveted nuclear weapons. I mean, they say that they don't. In fact, Ayatollah Khamenei issued a fatwa not so long ago, or quite a long time ago, actually, saying that it's haram to kill people by fire or something like that. And Iran has consistently said that they do not seek nuclear weapons capability. But at the same time, I think my personal opinion is that they seek to be a power which can go either way. So if they are threatened to an extent where they need to defend themselves, they want to be at a level where they can get nuclear weapons very quickly. So they're not going right up to the limit yet, but if they feel they need to, then they can get weapons very quickly. I personally think that is a logical strategy because I don't believe that. I mean, I wish no country had nuclear weapons, but I don't think it's fair that the world's major power can have nuclear weapons and use it to threaten everyone else, and everyone else is defenseless. I mean, why hasn't North Korea been attacked? Because it's got a nuclear weapon. And I think that the logical thing for Iran to do, to defend themselves, not to attack anybody else, and not to attack Israel even, because what would happen if Iran used nuclear weapons against Israel? They would kill all the Palestinians as well. You know, so it's illogical for them to do that, you know. But I think in terms of deterrence and self-defense, if Iran can get a nuclear weapon, I think many analysts, including myself, think they should go for that. I know that might seem controversial, but I think it's logical. If USA and China and Russia, UK and Israel can have nuclear weapons, then either they get rid of all of them and no one has them, or other countries can get them. That's only fair.
Yeah, sorry for. I want to move on and talk. Obviously, we've got this by-election in Gorton and Denton in Manchester. Around 32% of the voters there are Muslim, particularly in the Gorton part of the constituency. Denton is predominantly white working-class areas. We have the election last year, general election in July 2024. We've got independent MPs elected on the platform of Gaza. Jeremy Corbyn was re-elected. How do you see the Muslim vote in the aftermath of that general election?
Well, I think it was the first time in my lifetime where the Muslim community organized themselves pretty well and delivered some proper results. I know George Galloway has won several times off the back of the Muslim vote, but I think these were more one-off events. Whereas I think what we saw in 2024 was a organized, systematic attempt by the Muslim community to hurt Labour for supporting the genocide in Gaza, and to get their own independent MPs into Parliament. MPs that would serve our interests. We got 4 Muslim MPs and Jeremy Corbyn as well. So it was very, and there were several close second places as well. There were 10 other constituencies where the Muslim vote backed MP lost by just a few hundred votes. I think it's realistic that in the next election we could get about 25 MPs into Parliament on the back of the Muslim vote, because of the way where our populations are concentrated in certain constituencies around the country. And I think that should be our aim. And I personally like the policy of independence. I know, you might disagree with me on this, but I personally think that your party and the Workers' Party aren't really the answers for Muslims. I think we should be in the driving seat. We should be choosing our own candidates, not having people come to us and saying, vote for us. Instead of that, we should be going through a rigorous process whereby we choose the candidates that we are going to back with our vote. And we're forced into this position, by the way, Mohammed.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
I'm just going to slightly elaborate on what you just said. Dewsbury and Batley, we had 4 or 5 independent candidates in a run-up to last year's general election. I hosted a hustings in the constituency where 4 of the independent candidates agreed that whoever won that hustings would be the candidate. In the end, Iqbal Mohammed won the hustings and he went on to win the seat. Is that the sort of thing, sort of grassroots momentum? Because obviously Muslims are active in Workers' Party, your party, Greens, Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives, and feel as if they can influence from within those political parties.
Yes, I understand. I think it's a disagreement. Obviously, I'm not saying I speak for the Muslim community. I certainly don't. It's my personal opinion.
Sure.
Is that if you're in any of the parties, whether it's Labour, Tory, Reform, Workers, or Greens, you're always kind of beholden to the leadership agenda, which I don't think, even your party, to be honest, and it doesn't really coincide with necessarily with the agenda of British Muslims. There is some overlap, there's no doubt about it. I do believe that the Muslim community can work with these parties. So, for example, there may be certain constituencies at the next election where it's not feasible to get an independent candidate in, but the Greens are in a strong position, or Workers' Party are in a strong position, or your party, etc. And I think in those circumstances, we can use our discretion and common sense. But generally, I think the strategy should be for independents who basically answer to the Muslim community and try and get them into Parliament. I think that makes more sense, because then you don't have the conflict with party leadership, which could think otherwise.
Yeah, a bit like the independent MPs who are now part of your party. I know a couple of Iqbal Mohammed and Adnan Hussain stepped away, but the other 2 have decided to stay with the Pashukat Adam and Ayub Khan.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. You broke up at the beginning.
No, I was just saying, you look at some of those independents who join your party, others who've decided to stay independent. How important is it? Because obviously the political platforms, political parties have that infrastructure to make a difference.
Yes. Yeah, I think obviously your party, I think the 2 independent, I think it was a mistake for the independents to join your party. I think they were elected as independents, and I think they should have stayed as independents, because that's what they were elected as. And I think it's controversial for any MP to change affiliation during the lifetime of the Parliament. I personally think there should be an immediate by-election if they do that, whether it's Labour going to Reform or Conservatives going wherever. So I'm just being consistent. I don't agree with that principle at all. They were elected as independents. They should stay as independents. Despite the fact that I know them all and I like them all and I believe they're sincere people. I think 2 of them stepped away simply because of Zahra Sultana, her faction of the party, and she was making it very difficult for socially conservative people to be in the party, and they just had enough. And 2 of them, for whatever reason, have decided to stay and fight the good fight. It is true that parties have a certain infrastructure, and they can, get canvassers out on the ground. They have money, etc., etc. But I think we proved at the last election that we can return independent MPs into Parliament if we have a coordinated campaign. The community can be their champion. The community can be their financial backers and whatever. So I think it's very possible. I think it's the way to go. I think it was a massive success story at last election. I don't know why
Mm.
our community decided to basically stop a winning formula. Because that should have given us so much encouragement. 5 MPs into Parliament, 10 other close calls. I mean, it's literally a winning strategy. Why did we abandon it by joining your party? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, places, certain constituencies, you have a strong presence of those parties. You know, Rochdale, for example, where I come from, there's a strong workers' party. They're the alternative to the mainstream parties. Do you think Muslim votes and voters are taken for granted by the mainstream parties?
I think they are, especially Labour. I mean, Labour often, they thought they had some kind of divine right to our vote as Muslims, because they weren't the Tories, and they would be nicer to us. And obviously, a lot of Muslims are working class and of lower socioeconomic status, and they're the kind of people that tend to vote for Labour. But I think those days are gone now, Mohammed. We saw a huge, I think, a 30% fall off of the Muslim vote, at the last election to the Labour Party, which is absolutely huge. Obviously, old habits die hard, and you still get something like maybe 30% of the community, 40% of the community is still voting Labour, unfortunately, especially older people. But I think younger people are moving away. They can see Labour's role in supporting Israel during the genocide in Gaza, India over Kashmir, Iraq before that, and generally the stealing now, they're kind of trying to steal in the right-wing rhetoric of reform, aren't they? With their invective against migrants. And I think most of the community now, especially the activists, they can see through Labour. I think we'll see yet another massive fall off of the Muslim vote towards Labour. And I think there's a huge opportunity for other parties and independents to scoop up those votes, those Muslim votes which used to go to Labour. But those votes won't come cheap, Mohammed. There's got to be something in it for us. They can't take us for granted. If they want something for us, they're going to have to give us something back, and they're going to have to earn our votes.
Yeah, we were talking just before we came on air about the threat from reform and potential of reform. It's obviously polling around 28-29% in the polls, and if the polls are to be believed, they could form the next government in 2029 general election. In those circumstances, if it's a straight fight between Labour and reform, wouldn't it be right for members of our community to stop reform, vote for Labour?
Yeah, you see, this is the lesser of two evils argument, which is often used, and it was used in the London mayoral elections. A lot of Muslims weren't that happy with Sadiq Khan, but they saw the alternative as being the Tories. Look, ultimately, this is political disagreement. I myself, my conscience doesn't allow me to vote for Labour. So if it was Reform versus Labour in a constituency, I probably wouldn't vote for anybody, simply because I can't vote for a party that I believe is complicit in the massacre of my brothers and sisters in Palestine. And even if Reform UK came in because of that, I would just say so be it and leave it in Allah's hands. I can kind of get the argument of people, Mehdi Hassan has that argument, doesn't he? About don't vote for Trump.
He does, yeah.
Because vote for Biden because, he's bad, but Trump is worse. I get it. And if people want to do that, then, hold their nose and vote for Labour in certain constituencies. I'm not going to condemn them for it. I'm not going to say you're a bad Muslim. I'm just saying that I couldn't do that myself personally. But generally, there will always be exceptions to the rule. And what I'm interested in, and the message I want to get across to the Muslim community, is that we need to have a strategy whereby we're getting independent MPs into Parliament, we're supporting them, or we're supporting MPs from other parties, and they could be Muslims or non-Muslims. They don't have to be Muslims. By the way, I'm not getting sectarian about this. Or we support other parties on a case-by-case basis. But generally, I would say that Reform, obviously, as what I believe is a blatantly racist and Islamophobic project. We can't vote for them. We can't vote for the Tories because they're not much different to Reform, quite frankly. And we can't really vote for Labour, because of their role in multiple wars in the Middle East. Could there be exceptions? Maybe, on a case-by-case basis. But generally, I think the rule is don't vote Reform, don't vote Tory, don't vote Labour.
Yeah, so that leaves the Lib Dems, Workers' Party, your party, and the Greens that you could potentially choose. Let's just talk about No, go for it.
No. I mean, I live in. I won't tell you exactly where I live, just in case the far right want to come after me. But I live in a constituency. I mean, I wanted to vote at the last election, but there just wasn't anyone to vote for. You know, I didn't want to vote for. I mean, all the only parties that could win were Labour and the Tories. Everyone else was much of a muchness, and none of them were, you know, representing the views of Muslims. So we have this situation in this country where millions of votes probably go to waste, or it's not even worth voting.
Yeah, I would just think, let's explore that. I mean, obviously you've got Gorton and Denton, predominantly. The Denton part of the constituency is around 22%, so it's going to be difficult for Reform to win without votes from mainstream, you know, graduates, Muslims, ethnic minorities in the Gorton part, because Gorton's predominantly black, ethnic minority, Pakistani, Indian, Bengali, in that part of the constituency. It's a three-way battle now because the Workers' Party have stood their candidate down. What's your reaction to that, and how impactful will that be on the final result?
I know that the Workers' Party have a good local candidate. I've been told that. I haven't been on the ground yet, so I'm not speaking as an expert here. But obviously, I've been speaking to people every day from the area, and what they say to me that it was a three-horse race. Only Reform, Labour, and Greens have a chance of winning. So therefore, it was logical and good that Workers' Party stood down, because I'm sure they would have taken at least 5,000 votes, which could have been the difference between the Greens winning and losing. I think Reform are favourites. I don't know, the momentum seems to be very much for Reform in the country as a whole. But I think if there is a campaign...
Yeah, but the pollsters, Roshan, is suggesting, as I said to you, that Gorton is 22% of the overall constituency. So the majority of voters actually are in the Gorton part. And so Matt Goodwin might run a campaign in the sort of Denton area, but when it comes to Gorton and not engaging the rest of the sort of, you know, middle class students,
I mean,
ethnic minorities.
Yeah, it's actually the first time I've heard that, because I heard it was the other way around from a local one, and they said that there were actually more voters in the Denton part of the area and more likely to vote Reform. But who knows? I can't comment on that. I just think that I think you know, obviously I think we're gonna see Labour have a massive majority there, but I think we're going to see a catastrophic fall in their vote. But given that they have a 13,000 majority, they're still probably going to come quite close to winning the seat. And unfortunately, lots of Muslims still vote Labour, you know, and I personally think that's scandalous. I don't see how a believing and practicing Muslim with good conscience can vote for the Labour Party ever again. But nevertheless, old habits die hard. I think the Labour Party is quite embedded in certain areas in that constituency. Therefore, there will be a lot of Muslims voting Labour. But I think if the Greens can take 10% of the Muslim Labour vote, then they'll have the left-wing vote on top of that, the anti-reform vote as well. I think a lot of people hate reform in this country as well. So I think it's going to be pretty close, and it's all to play for. And I think that if I was living in the constituency, I'm not a Green Party fan. I don't agree with a lot of their policies. I don't want to see them in power. But the fact is that if it's a choice between them, Reform and Labour, I would choose Greens any day. And if I was living in the constituency, I must admit I probably would vote Green.
Okay. Well, there's a list of candidates which you can get from the local council websites, both manchester.gov.uk and also tameside.gov.uk, for a full list of the candidates standing in this by-election. We are not covering it in the same way we would normally cover a by-election for obvious reasons. Let's take one final call, and then we're going to wrap up because we've got less than 5 minutes left. Let's go to the line. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Takbeer TV.
Walaikum salam. My first question is that being a part of a mainstream party like Labour, Reform, Conservative, is that not better for the Muslims? And when you have independence coming from two different groups, your party and the George Galloway party, same kind of narratives, but basically against the mainstream parties, and like the way Ocean mentioned, the question of conscience, and then came back to the point of lesser evil in all practicality. Is there a case here that should the Muslims stick to the mainstream parties and try and bring the Muslim voice forward, or these parties are actual alternative, these independents? And expanding on that, what do you think? The independents have been in the parliament now for quite a bit, and the strong individuals, have they made any difference? Have they made any difference since the last elections? Another question to Ocean is that.
Okay, sorry, we've got. Sorry, brother, we've got less than 3-4 minutes. So as much as I want to take another question, let's take that.
I'll answer a question. I'll be quick. Do you think
you give them? I know, but okay, go on.
Five
Sorry, go on.
Went ahead of the journalistic responsibilities in the last election, and actually did a bit of politics in the last elections, or not?
So I didn't get that last question. What was it?
So what was your role in Five Pillars' role in that general election?
In
regards to political parties or voting for individuals. Sure.
I'll answer really quickly because I know we're short of time. So in terms of the mainstream parties, getting in the mainstream parties, I mean, that has been the strategy of the Muslim community, to get into the mainstream parties and work through them, and it's failed. Because ultimately you become crushed by the system. It was like me in the mainstream media. I was always going to fail because I was going to get crushed by the system. So that's that question addressed. The second one was about the independent MPs. I mean, I know all the independent MPs, but at the same time, I see my role as being a bit apart as well. I personally think they didn't do as much or make as much impact as they should have done in their first couple of years of Parliament. I thought they should have done more. I think Ayub Khan did a sterling job in Birmingham over Maccabi Tel Aviv. I think without him being in Parliament, Maccabi Tel Aviv wouldn't have been banned by West Midlands police. Unfortunately, that has been kind of overturned, but the fact is that he made an impact there. Obviously, they do speak up for Gaza, they do speak up for Palestine, but we're at a very early, moment in this process. And I think it should be a long-term process whereby, getting in the mainstream parties is short-term thinking. I think Muslims need to think long-term. Where are we going to be in 20 years' time? Not in 2 years' time. We're always thinking short-term. We're always thinking firefighting. We should be thinking long-term rather than short-term. The final question about Five Pillars' role in politics. I mean, yeah, we're not in. I never say we're independent. We're not. We're not objective journalists. We are here to champion the Muslim community. We are on the side of Islam and the Muslims. We are believing and practicing Muslims, and we don't pretend to be anything else. And our journalism reflects that. So yeah, we will support the believing and practicing Muslims. We will support Islam. We will support the Ummah, and we are completely unapologetic about that. And if that makes us biased, then fair enough. I'll take that accusation. What I would say is that we're accurate in our journalism. We don't lie, even if it's about our worst enemies. We don't lie. The information that you get from us is accurate, but are we biased towards Islam and Muslims? 100%.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Roshan. Really powerful conversation. I would hope we had another hour. We could do a host of other issues, but I'm sure we'll come back. What's your prediction about Gorton and Denton then?
If you ask me now, I would say Reform are favourites and Labour and Green are going to come a close second. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the Greens win. Maybe we can talk again in a month's time. I might have a different answer.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. The by-election is on Thursday, the 26th of February. As I said, you can find out a full list of candidates on manchester.gov.uk, or if you're in Denton, it's tameside.gov.uk. Thank you so much to Roshan Saleh, the co-editor of the Five Pillars media platform. From me, Mohammed Shafiq, and the whole team here at Takbeer TV. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you very, very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.